Well, good afternoon, viewers. Today we have a 2015 Nissan Rogue. It's got 132,000 kilometers on it. I see the MIL is on. It's here because it randomly goes into what the customer described as a transmission limp mode. Has poor throttle response, like it's in the wrong gear. It was towed here and dropped off. A customer said the battery went dead a few days ago because it had been sitting. Guess they hadn't been driving the vehicle. This car is a repaired wreck, so there could be wiring issues. But first and foremost, we're going to scan it and see what kind of codes it's setting. So this is a new record. I've never scanned this vehicle before. That looks like the correct VIN. Key on, engine off. Battery's not too healthy in this thing, so I hope it doesn't go flat on me while I'm doing this scan. Normally I'd put a battery charger on it, but I don't have it in the shop yet. It's taken a while. I believe it's polling the modules to see what controllers exist. Don't take too long, we haven't got much battery. Well, that was painful. Let's do a code scan. Well, that's a good sign. Vehicle speed sensor A. Come on, close. CAN communication circuit, input speed sensor, primary speed, evap small leak. Power supply circuit history code, battery voltage code, ignition voltage high. Sun load sensor, AC amplifier, power supply circuit low voltage, ignition relay. Are we done yet? Not yet. But I'm not liking this P0500 and this P1715. Ooh, network codes. Well, that's probably because of low battery voltage and configuration errors, but low battery voltage. I went to start it and I got a message on the dash said that the key wasn't recognized. So then I unlocked the doors and locked the doors with the key fob. It's a push button start. And it started fine. So it's still doing a network scan. I'll pick up when we get to the end. So it scanned 14 controllers. Like I said, I'm worried about these P0500 and 1715. The small leak code is minor. The power supply codes, I think, is because of the battery going dead, and that's probably a reason for some of the U codes. On the OBD2 side of it, vehicle speed sensor A. Well, we've got a record of these codes. I wonder if we can go into engine controls here. That was in the engine, it wasn't in the tranny. That's odd. Boy, this system is slow. Let's read the codes in the engine again. P0500, P1715. Let's see if there's any freeze frame data. Okay, let's see about this freeze frame data. Engine speed 1462. Pretty useless. It's all engine related. No vehicle speed. Let's look at the 1715 code. looks like the same freeze frame. Absolute throttle position. Yeah, pretty much useless. Well, let's clear all the codes out. And I'm not going to clear them just yet. Let's look at Troubleshooter for P1715 if it's got that one. P0500 and P1715. There we go. Let's see what it says. ECM detects no signal from vehicle speed sensor. Vehicle speed sensor circuit is open and shorted. Okay. VSS is two-part system. VSS AC voltage generators located on the trans, front-wheel drive, and two-wheel drives, or transfer case, four-wheel drives. It's gear-driven. Sensor voltage and frequency increase with speed. Well, obviously, if it loses a speed signal, it's not going to shift correctly. And what was the other code again? 1715. Let's see if that one's in here. P17 transcode C trans troubleshooter. There was no. Let's see if there's any codes in the transmission. Now that could be one in the same computer. Let's check. Just the power supply circuit code, and the battery had gone dead, so that's transmission code tips P1715 1722 1705. Alright, I'm going to look it up. So I'm doing a network code clear now that I've got a recording of the codes, and it's painfully slow. Pick up when I get to the end. So that's cleared codes from 14 controllers, and I'm going to look at some data now. So I found 3 data parameters in the engine control computer related to vehicle speed. There's vehicle speed sensor in kilometers per hour, ASCD, vehicle speed sensor in kilometers per hour, and interestingly that one's sitting at 29, and then down here vehicle speed in kilometers an hour. Now when I start driving, both of these, this is engine RPM, both of these increase, but when it hits about 29 miles an hour, this one starts to read. So you can see when I accelerate, the top left one is increasing, and all of a sudden the other one will come online right about now. It's like it's starting out at 30 for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't know if that's normal. I've never scanned one of these before. The transmission's working fine. There's a bit of a hum in this thing, like it might have a wheel bearing starting to go. It's not load sensitive when I change lanes. This thing has lane departure warning. Just cross the center line without signaling. So it ran fine on that road test. I recorded the trans data as well. I'm going to save this recording and analyze it. This is a CVT, I believe, and these are the primary input speed sensors. So this is actual vehicle speed here. You can see me slowing down. So that's when it's changing ratios, I would imagine. I'm going to look at case histories and see if there's any common thread here. So I found a couple of cases on it, but no silver bullets yet. Here's the troubleshooting steps for P1715 input speed sensor. It says the ECM receives the input speed signal from the TCM through the CAN communication line. And if you recall, we had a U1000 code CAN communication circuit fault. Possible causes are CAN communication line is open or shorted, harness or connectors, input speed sensor circuit is open or shorted. Now, it's funny we didn't have any codes in the TCM, the transmission control module, but that could be due to the battery going dead. it may have erased the codes. It says if displayed with DTC any network code. Doesn't say P0500 though. It says to diagnose those first. So I'm going to look at P0500. I did find a bulletin containing the P1715, but it mentions P0776 may have hesitation and lack of power, and that's exactly what they're describing. P0744, 4680, whatever, are stored. This does not apply. If it should occur, 1715 input speed sensor may be stored with DTC's P0776. We didn't have the P0776. Rogue reprogram the TCM. Well, we're not doing that. Let's see what the other TSB is. Any combination of the following DTCs. If P1715 exists with no other DTCs, the bulletin does not apply. Well, I don't have any of these other DTCs. Again, because of a dead battery, everything's up in the air, so I might need to drive this vehicle until it acts up for me. Let's go back here and do I guess I want to keyword search for P0500. The transmission worked flawlessly while I drove it, but I didn't drive it very far. Let's see if there's anything about P0. Oh, okay. Just when you need them the most, sometimes they go down. Huh. For some reason it connected to the router in the house because I was outside the garage door. I guess that signal was stronger. So we're back connected to the shop. Let's go back in here, log in, and look up that P0500. Okay, so we're back online and looked up the P0500 vehicle speed signal. It says the ECM receives vehicle speed signals from two different paths via CAN communication line. One is from the ABS actuator and electric unit control unit via the combination unit, and the other is from the TCM. So again, it could be caused by a network problem. Setting conditions are at 20 kilometers an hour. The ECM detects the following status continuously for 5 seconds or more. The difference between the vehicle speed calculated by the output shaft speed sensor transmitted from the TCM to the ECM via CAN communication and the vehicle speed indicated on the combination meter exceeds 10 miles an hour. I'm going to have to ask the customer if they've had any issues or noticed any issues with the speedo. If DTC is displayed with the U code or the P0607, first perform diagnosis for the U code. Oh, lovely. Can't anything be simple? Well, I think first and foremost, before we get carried away here, is we do a visual inspection of this vehicle speed sensor where it's located. And then I think I'm going to have to drive the vehicle until I experience the problem, now that I've cleared all the relevant codes out of the computers. I'm going to look where that speed sensor lives. So I found the component location for the CVT control system output speed sensor. Now, is that the vehicle speed sensor, or the vehicle speed sensor is an input to the ABS module? There's input and output shaft speed signals. Oh my goodness sakes. I think we're going to put this up in the air and have a look. Description, vehicle speed sensor, engine controls. Let's look at this description. 2 vehicle speeds via CAN. One is sent from the combination meter, the other is from the transmission control module. These signals for ASCD control. Automatic speed control device. See description. What is automatic speed control device? Is that cruise control? Was that the code we had? 1574? 1715. Well, I think we're going to lift it up and have a look at all the wiring that's visible, and then I'm going to drive this vehicle until it acts up and see what codes generate and see if I can tell what's going on. Well, I went to take the scanner off the vehicle and I see the check engine light is back on. Let's see if there's any codes in the tranny. Oh, that's interesting. Well, one of those cases said to check the power supply circuit. Huh. That cleared before. Let's see what the codes are in the engine. The check engine light wasn't on when I drove it in the shop, but it's on now. No codes in there, but there's codes in the transmission controls. Generic functions. Let's see if it's displayed in mode 3. TCM power relay sense circuit low. Well, that gives us a little bit more direction. So this P0890 transmission control module power relay sense circuit low, according to the diagnostic flow chart, sets when there's a loss or low voltage to the transmission control module. I'm going to look at some data and see if there's any data PIDs related to it. So I'm going to turn the key on. Well, according to data in the TCM, there's two data PIDs related to voltage. One is backup voltage, and right now it says 11.4, and voltage applied is 11.6, but I'm not sure if the code is current or not. If you recall, I mentioned this vehicle was in an accident, so there could be some damaged wiring. The transmission control module lives right behind the battery. I'm going to go and manipulate the wires while I watch this voltage. Nothing really changed. I'm going to tap on the transmission computer. No change. Well, I think I'm going to pull up a schematic for this thing and look at the power feeds and grounds to the transmission computer and load test those circuits. As far as I can tell, this is the transmission computer here behind the battery. I've had it running now, watching data on the scan tool, and the voltages are fluctuating and the code's gone to history. I've cleared it and it hasn't come back. I wiggled wiring harnesses down in this power distribution center. I think I'm going to just take the module right out and load test the power feeds with a headlight or something like that. I think it comes from a 15 amp fuse, so it should run a headlight. So it turns out there's another fuse panel below the left headlight. There it is down there. And that first fuse that's pulled out next to the other 310 amp fuse is the main battery feed to the CVT transmission. Come on, focus. Now I pulled the fuse and you can see that it's oxidized. When I pull that fuse out while it's running, it sets the same transmission code. So I'm going to clean up those terminals. This little plastic cover wasn't clipped down, wasn't sealed. So I'm going to try to clean up those terminals, some deoxid on them, and hopefully that's going to resolve the issue.
So that actual cover wasn't installed properly on there, and that would let Mother Nature in there possibly oxidize the terminals. So I've cleaned up the terminals with some deoxit spray and put some Stabilitin 22A on them, and I've managed to get the cover back on, put all these covers back on correctly. I'm going to clean the battery cables because they need to be serviced, just to be proactive. I don't think that's causing the problem, but it's not good. Okay, so we're going to do a network code clear after cleaning the battery cables, reset all the computers. There is an issue with the key fob, I believe. I think the battery might be weak in it because sometimes it doesn't recognize it. Might try changing the battery in there. This takes several minutes to go through the network. Okay, so I managed to clear 14 computers of codes. We're going to go back into the transmission computer, and we're going to monitor some data while we drive the vehicle, build a custom data list. And I know now that if I lose that ignition or that battery power wire from that 10 amp fuse, oh, it loaded the same data list. Well, that's good. So it was backup voltage to the TCM that we lost with that fuse being pulled. I don't know why it's only 11.6 volts. I got the battery charger on it. Unless my battery charger is not making a connection. My battery charger wasn't making a good connection at the ground on the engine block, so I moved it to the battery. Well, I'm not going to know if this is fixed until I drive it for a few days, because the problem would only occur once a week, where it would go into limp mode and it would set loss of vehicle speed signal and loss of transmission signal. Now the transmission speed sensor signal is CAN bus to the ECM, and the vehicle speed sensor signal is CAN bus from the ABS through the instrument cluster to the ECM. And those two codes would set if there was a problem with the network communication, or a problem with the loss of the TCM signal, and I would imagine you would lose that if you had a battery power problem to the TCM. So let's have a look at that data that I recorded. So here's the recording of the data from the transmission computer when I removed that fuse, which was fuse number 59, a 10 amp hot at all times fuse. Oh, I lost the recording now. Here it is. So when I pulled that fuse, it dropped from 14.2 volts down to 0 while it was running. And of course it set that P0890 code. So I've cleared all the codes from all the computers. I'm going to reset the clock on the radio, and I'm going to drive it for a couple days and post a follow-up.